Unity Matters.
Hello, and thank you for joining in to what is my first podcast at the Holocaust Tolerance Memorial Center. A very special man, Bernie Fershpan, asked me to please have podcast under the umbrella of art. And so it could be a healing for us. And ironically, for decades, I always wanted to create a class in creativity, but never would I think that it could be more than what I even imagined and not in a New York State requirement. So here I am on my first podcast with the most amazing person to present, and that is Rabbi Josh Franklin from the Jewish Center of the East Hampton. And what makes it even more special is the synagogue is so inclusive and so open and absolutely amazing. And so I want to now introduce a very special person that has changed the Hamptons and changed Judaism to bring more people in. He is just a pillar of creativity. And so I'd like to introduce Rabbi Josh Franklin.
Ranelle, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here with you and an honor to be here for the very first podcast of yours as well.
Yes, this is. And doing some research, I didn't know that your father was a rabbi.
My father is indeed a rabbi, yeah.
That was very surprising. So I'd like to ask you, how did you know when you wanted to become a rabbi?
Sure, the question is always there when your father is a rabbi, or do you want to be a rabbi just like your father? And my answer is always no, absolutely not. That's his thing, not my thing. And growing up, everyone would ask the question, no, I don't want to be a rabbi like my father. And I got to college, and on a whim, I took a Jewish studies class at Clark University where I was an undergraduate student, and I took Intro to Hebrew Bible 101, thinking like, oh, this is going to be an easy A, right? Like I've, gone to Hebrew school my entire life. I know what I'm doing. I know this stuff. So I take it, and it was not an easy A. It was interesting, difficult, and caused me to wrestle with texts in ways that I never did. So I took Intro to Hebrew Bible 102 and another Jewish studies class, and then all of a sudden I'm studying in Israel at Hebrew University for a summer, and I'm teaching at a religious school locally, and people kept asking me the question, and it was no, that's my dad's thing, but suddenly it started to become, I don't know, and maybe, I'm not sure. And then one day, one of my faculty advisor is trying to tell me that she wants me to do a PhD program with her, and I was like, I think I want to go to rabbinical school. And that was really one of the first times I said it out loud. I do have a friend who the other day challenged me, and she's the kind of person who always speaks the truth and says whatever's on her mind. And someone was asking me in her presence, like, "Oh, do you want to be a rabbi because your dad's a rabbi, right?" And I said, "No, I wanted to be a rabbi despite my dad being a rabbi," which is my typical line. And she goes, "Oh, come on." We all know that, the psychology is too strong for that it just to be a coincidence or for you to rebel against it and then suddenly have your own thing. Of course, it played a role, and you know what? She is perhaps a little bit right, but that's perhaps for me to explore a little bit more deeply with me and my therapist. But certainly my path to being a rabbi took a little bit, had a lot of twists and turns, and I can't say that my dad was completely divorced from my decision to be a rabbi, but certainly growing up, I always knew I specifically didn't want to be a rabbi until I did.
Well, that's a beautiful comment, and that leads me to something totally different. Because what this is supposed to be about also is that I want our listeners to know there's a fire in their belly, there's a passion that's calling. Perhaps, and before I get to my next point, do you think we have a predetermined calling that before birth, that actually the divine, call it God, Hashem, has put into our path?
There's a great Hebrew word. The word is tachlit, and it means kind of your calling or your what it is that you were meant to do. And I do think this is very much my calling. The irony is that people kept asking me over and over again as I was older, 18, 19, 20, do you want to be a rabbi just like your dad? But I have 2 older brothers, and people weren't asking them.
Oh,
They were asking me, and I think it was they saw my calling before I actually saw it myself.
they saw your call.
They saw my calling. And I do think that there are times where people can certainly miss it for whatever reason. But this is absolutely who I was meant to be, who God had intended me to be. And it was about me actually answering. There's a great Hebrew word. The word is Hineni.
Hineni.
Hineni, it means I'm here.
I'm here.
I'm ready, and I'm fully present. And when God calls to you, can you say Hineni?
Oh, beautiful.
There's a great teaching that I talk about all the time. If you were to ask even a group of Jewish professionals, where's the first time someone in the Bible says Hineni, say 8 out of 10 of them are going to say, oh, it's Adam who says Hineni when God calls to him and says, where are you?
Where are you?
But no, actually, Adam isn't able to say Hineni. Adam hides and says, I hid because, I was afraid and because I'm naked.
Oh.
And Adam is unable to actually see the calling within himself when God calls to him and be able to respond. Hineni, I'm here, I'm ready, I'm present. It's actually Abraham who's the first person who's able to respond, Hineni, when God calls to him. And over again with Moshe, with our forefathers, when God calls to them, they all begin, Hineni. I'm here, I'm ready, I'm present, I'm listening. Not an easy thing to do, but it really is the paradigm for, I think, how we hear and respond to calling. And it's not just I'm standing here. It's that, God, tell me what's next so that I can go do it, so that I could move forward. And it's a beautiful word, which is untranslatable directly into the English language. But when you hear God calling, I guess the question is, are you able to say Hineni?
Beautiful. So I have a 2-part before I get to my other part, but you said something that touched my heart. You said, which I didn't know, Adam was an atheist.
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, no, he was not a believer?
He was unable to answer the calling. He hid and says, I'm afraid.
I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Okay. On that note, I am absolutely blown on page 113, and perhaps I would like you to read from that, Rabbi. You would do a better job than I.
Sure. There's a great poem. I think it's by Norman Hirsch in the prayer book that we use at the Jewish Center, the Hamptons, Mishkan Tefillah. And Ranelle, like you, I've always been taken by this poem.
You too?
If I were to say top 5 things that I like to read in this prayer book.
This is my top 1.
This might be in top 3. Maybe it's at the very top. Who knows? But it goes like this. Once or twice in a lifetime, a man or woman may choose a radical leaving, having heard, Lech Lecha, go forth. God disturbs us toward our destiny by hard events and by freedom's now urgent voice, which explode and confirm who we are. We don't like leaving, but God loves becoming.
Wow. What do you say to that? How do you make it simple for our listeners to understand that perhaps that once and twice in a lifetime, and I bring that up because you're the perfect example. You're a rabbi now, you're born to a rabbi, but one of your brothers, you have 2 others, saw that in you.
Yeah.
How does this tie in?
There's a great story that I heard from Rabbi David Wolpe. I was at a conference, and he's telling the story that one time he and Rabbi Lawrence Kushner were asked to teach a session to a group of rabbinical students, and they both agreed. And then they both forgot that they were supposed to teach it and didn't plan anything. And the day before they're supposed to teach it, the organizer of the event calls them up and says, by the way, what's the name of your talk that you're teaching? We haven't told the students yet what you're teaching about. And they both panic and they call each other. What are we going to do? We haven't planned anything. And Rabbi Kushner says, I got it. I've got the title that works for any given group of Jewish people and any particular subject. Says the title is Judaism at the Crossroads. And that is very much a perpetual state of where the Jewish people are. And let me tell you a little bit more about what it means to be at the crossroads. It means that you are at a place of transition. And your question is, can you move forward to the next step? Or are you ready for what's next, especially when God calls out to you? And the crossroads is actually a comfortable place to be. The crossroads is a place where there's often a great deal of business and commerce and comfortability, but it's also a place where I think we tend to get stuck. And by the way, in my book that I've been writing and now looking to publish, I have a whole chapter on a place in the Bible called Haran. And Haran actually means crossroads. And we find that our biblical ancestors often get stuck in this place called Haran. So Abraham, who is leaving with his father Terach and his brother Nahor, they're leaving to go to the land of Canaan, the promised land. They set out, and they leave, and they stop in Haran. And they settle there. And they pause their journey. It's not clear actually how long they are there, but there are different textual traditions that say between 5 and 15 years they settled in Haran. They settled in the crossroads. You should be asking, why didn't they continue their journey? Why are they so stuck there? And it's because of comfortability, because of the allure to simply stay put, especially when you are settled. By the way, the crossroads isn't a place of growth. It's a place of comfort. And when God finally does call to Abraham and says to him, Lech lecha, go forth to the land that I'll show you, Abraham goes. His father Terach had previously or just died, and Nahor, his brother, stays. Only Abraham has the courage to get up and go and hear that calling, Lech lecha, go forth. And so he was there 5 to 15 years. That's a long time in someone's life to be stuck at a place where you are unable to move forward. And it's not the place he was meant to be. His calling is to be in the land of Canaan, the promised land. And he's headed there and stops and gets stuck. And I think that is a very real experience for people, to get stuck in a particular place where they were not meant to be. And by the way, Abraham needs to choose a wife for his son Isaac. And what they want to do in that time period, you marry someone within your tribe. And so Abraham says to his servant Eliezer, go find a wife for my son Isaac in Haran, but do not let my son Isaac go to Haran. Why is he so afraid? Because he knows that if you go there, Isaac might never return. Like his brother, Isaac might get stuck, and so he doesn't let Isaac go there. But do you know who does go there? Is Jacob, Isaac's son, who flees after his brother Esau wants to kill him. He heads over to Haran in order to also find his wife. He meets this beautiful person of the tribe. Her name is Rachel. He wants to marry her. His later-to-be father-in-law, Laban, says to him, you've got to work 7 years for her hand in marriage. So already he's in it for 7 years. He works 7 years there. He goes to marry her, and he actually accidentally marries her sister, Leah, because he got tricked by his father-in-law, Laban. So Laban says, okay, work another 7 years. Okay, now he's in it for 14 years. In Haran, he's stuck. And by the way, even after he marries Rachel, he's still there for another 6 years working for his father-in-law, because that's quite precisely what happens when you hit a crossroads. It's easy to get stuck. It's hard to take the next step forward. And like Abraham, his grandfather, it took the calling from God to say, this is not where you were meant to be. Go forth, return to the land of your birthplace, the land of your inheritance.
And that's what I love when you're giving Torah portions and you're explaining from the Bible, from our Torah. People shouldn't, I think this is old stories, it doesn't relate to us. It's really metaphorical, as well as to teach us that this is happening and it's modern right now.
Yeah.
So how long do people really get stuck? Like, maybe like you thinking, like, how long does it take you decided to become a rabbi? When you think about it, how long do you think is normal when people are so-called stuck? And you've also spoken about being in the wilderness. Is that the same thing as being stuck and go forth?
I think the wilderness might be a different place, but that's worth a whole other conversation.
Okay, right.
But let me say this. The namesake or one of the namesakes for the Jewish people is the Hebrews. And in Hebrew, Hebrews are called Ivrim. If you look at the root of the word Ivrim, ayin bet resh, it means to cross over. And the first person to be called a Ivri in the Bible is Abraham, because he makes the sacred crossing from Haran to the land of Canaan, and therefore gets the title Ivri, Abraham the crosser. That's who we are. We actually, we're crossers. Not that we're wanderers and have no place to settle, but I think it's more about the life experience or the historical context of the experiences that we have as a people, where we are often in a place where we are stuck and have to figure out how to cross over. We're often at the crossroads, but our namesake is about leaving the crossroads.
Beautiful.
And so you're 100% right that the Bible isn't a story of the past. The Bible is a mirror for our present, whatever time period we're in.
Yes, and as so much more to talk about, but I'd like to know, when was it that moment you decided to write the book? What was it in you? Did you know you were a writer, an author? And what brought you there? Perhaps something in the community? What called you to go forth with this book? I know it's your first book, am I right?
It is my first book, indeed.
It's your first book and my first podcast, your first book. Okay. Tell us, and how did you come to do this?
So I teach Torah a lot. I teach Torah every single week. And Ranelle, you've been in my Torah study group for a long time. And the way that I see text is often different than I think a lot of my colleagues. And so often when I'm looking at text, I see it in a very different way than a lot of people see it. I've got to give a little bit of credit to one of the people who taught me the style of understanding Torah that I currently teach, and that's Rabbi Alan Ullman. Another story about this incredible rabbi. He's the best teacher of Torah that you've never heard of. And it's because that's the kind of guy who he is. But at my former synagogue, Temple Beth Elohim in Wellesley, Massachusetts, I just so happened to wander in on a session that he was teaching, wondering, we have 4 rabbis in this community, and we have this other rabbi who's teaching text. It's my first year there. Let me go check out this guy's class, because if you're going to teach Torah as a rabbi in a community that already has 4 rabbis, there must be something special about you, and people are talking up this guy. And I sat in his class for about 5 minutes before I absolutely realized this guy's got it. He's got something that I've never seen before. He's got this spark, this love of Torah, this way of understanding people and the experience of relating text to life that I had never really learned myself, even in my studies as a rabbi. And so I started taking some of his classes and then working with him one-on-one. And I realized not only was he a great teacher, but he and I understood text in a very similar way. And his aptitude for just really seeing a text and understanding the intricate web of connections within any given word or any given passage was very much like the way that I would look at a text. And so I started studying with him more and more, and then I started teaching more and more and more, and I honestly couldn't tell you all the time the difference between what he was teaching and what I was just coming up with myself. Sometimes I feel like he was trying to lead me there, because that's what he does with text. And if you've sat in on my classes before, you know I like to sometimes withhold the answer.
Yes.
Or even if I withhold the answer, I might get 5 different beautiful answers from people in the class that I had never thought of, because that's what Torah should do. And one of the greatest pieces of wisdom from a book within rabbinic literature called Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, comes from a very unknown rabbi. And in fact, the one quote that's attributed to him in all of rabbinic literature is one of my favorite quotes. And it comes from a rabbi named Ben Bagbag. And he says, "Hafochba v'hafochba dekulaba." Keep turning the Torah over and over again, for everything is in it. And the idea, the way I like to describe it, is the amount of material within the Torah is finite, but the way that you can interpret it is infinite. Or maybe another metaphor to understand this is if you think of the geometric figure of a fractal. I kind of think of a snowflake, right? And if you look at a snowflake, it has a set area, defined area. But if you look at it and you keep on zooming in on the perimeter, you see that it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's because, and it keeps on creating these shapes and lines and turns and twists. And that's because the area is defined and finite, but the perimeter itself is infinite.
Wow.
And that's Torah.
That's Torah.
So when we're learning a text, we're learning something that is finite, but we're drawing from it infinite wisdom.
My listeners are going to be very interested in knowing how you do your creative process as a rabbi. We're going to do that in part 2.
Okay.
But before we end, is there a place, could you tell us the name of your book, where we can get it, when will it be published, and also where we can find you and become a member for the Jewish Center of the Hamptons? Because before we end this session, I just want you to know that Rabbi is musical, and he have Shabbat on the beach, which is beyond cool, but more important is that he brings so many more Jewish people and every other people to, and just last session in Torah, we had it on the beach, and he said, can you imagine, it was the whale? There was
a whale there.
A whale. You wanted to teach with this parsha, and awe. And there comes with your energy. This is the kind of electric, cool energy he has like none other. And if you don't believe me, another special rabbi tunes into Torah and our class from Sedona, which has the most incredible spiritual energy. You are looking to such a genius. But before I end this session and go into your creative way, tell us about the name of the book and where can we get that?
The book, which is not yet published, is called Where Are You? Finding Yourself in the Bible. And I'm still looking for a publisher, so if there's a publisher listening out there who's interested, I hope they would reach out. But you can follow my insights and teachings on social media at rabbijoshfranklin.com or at the Jewish Center of the Hamptons Instagram and Facebook page at Jewish Center of the Hamptons. And like you said about Shabbat on the beach, anyone who says that Judaism is dying and that people are disconnected from Judaism and the Jewish people and that the Jewish people are dying out slowly, I would encourage them to check out Shabbat on the beach. We were over 400 people at the beach last week.
That's right.
It was a beautiful energy of people coming together, singing and dancing and loving Judaism and living Judaism and singing all the different musical pieces that bring us together each and every Shabbat. Unlike anything, I think, out there Jewishly.
That. You created
So I got to give credit to one of my predecessors, Rabbi David Gelfand, who started the idea of Shabbat on the beach. But like Judaism, it changes, it grows, it evolves. And even when I got to the Jewish Center of the Hamptons, it was a Tot Shabbat on the beach. And it was short, it was very simple, and now it's Shabbat for everybody on the beach, a multi-generational experience of bringing everyone together. And the thread that we're trying to hit is to create a Judaism that, and a community that is accessible for everyone simultaneously.
Yes.
For the young kids, for the older people, for everywhere in between. And like you said, actually we get quite a few people who aren't Jewish,
they're loving
who are spiritual, who come and say, this is amazing, we love this experience. And they're getting Shabbat in their lives, which I think is a great gift that the Jewish people can give.
Because not only that, Rabbi Josh opens it up to the whole community and in churches. We do it through another lens. He's beyond. He is the Renaissance rabbi. But I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode, series Humanity Through Art. And be sure to subscribe, stay connected and engaged. And please, we're going to do part 2 of this wonderful conversation